So, okay. So I just made a small welcome talk to our audiences, but still people are joining us, Lone. And I have just briefly introduced you and gave a very brief information about our meetup for the 2 days event. But in order to not make the other audiences who have already joined wait longer, maybe it's better for me to give the word to you as our sponsor and our supporter for this event. So Lone is going to be presenting about the Concordium platform, which is a brand new blockchain infrastructure with very very widely adoption targets in the future. So Lone, it's your word. Please go ahead and welcome again, and thank you so much for your support for this event.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. It's in the full presentation mode.
Very good. I had to install a new computer this morning. The other crashed, so it was last second here to get everything installed. And that makes me talking about low code, no code, because it was a Mac computer. It was relatively easy. And this is what it's all about when we talk about blockchain. It's a wide markets. You have blockchain, you have cryptocurrency, what has that to do with each other? You have the developers, you have various languages, you have applications which needs to fit into the API suite in corporations. So this is all these things I'm going to touch. It's to show that it's a wide amount of things you have to talk about when you speak about blockchain. And this is some of the things which is super interesting, but also some of the things which makes it difficult for people to get their arms around and difficult for adoption. Break in, come with some questions if you like via the presentation. We say Concordium is made for the future economy. It is very exciting. If I had given this speech just 2 years ago, when I joined Concordium, I wouldn't even have had the imagination to talk about the things we're able to talk about today when we speak about blockchain. And I'm sure, because I was also there at the beginning of the internet, it's very much in parallel. We don't know yet what we can use it for. So it's to get on board, because otherwise I know one thing for sure is that we are missing the train if we don't get on board. Please, if you want to reach out, I'm at LinkedIn. You have the QR code here. We want to have a dialogue. We want to widen our audience. Please do lean out. Who am I? So I grew up in large corporations like Maersk. I went to the banking sector. I've worked for some of the biggest bank in the world, like Credit Suisse. I've worked for systemic important banks close to regulators. I've made fintech software. I have touched nearly every vertical in the world, from aviation, technology, shipping, retail. I sit today at the board of IKEA and at the board of Volvo Cars, where I hold in the chairmanship on behalf of the biggest owner, the Chinese corporation Geely. And I sit in the Aker Group in Norway, who is very dedicated to convert the entire Norwegian economy into sustainable economy. So this is who I am. And I think it's important because I can take all this background from whatever I'm working with boards and C-suites, also working closely with a company called ServiceNow, who is a platform of platform. So I believe that entire, amount of knowledge of what is going on in the C-suite, but also knowing now the spearheading groundbreaking technology behind Concordium will make it possible to get this into our product, to make that relevant and accessible, and make sure that our blockchain can have a huge adoption. Just to mention some of the things you can use blockchain for, you have challenges amongst other things in supply chain. This is just one vertical. So supply chain with the modern supply chain can take advantage of the technology in various ways, but there's still a lot of challenges also in a supply chain system. The entire amount of lack of traceability is the core thing behind supply chain towards consumers, but also when you look at ESG, when you look at greenwashing. So the lack of transparency, the lack of responsiveness, the lack of visibility, and also that there's a lot of data reconciliation problems, and mostly there's also a lack of trust. You often deal with partners where you don't know who is behind it, who is controlling what. There is less chance of a single source of truth around when you deal about complex systems with many stakeholders. And this is one of the challenges you have when you're doing both with supply chain, when you're doing also with traceability of other things. And this is where blockchain is really important, and in particular, the permissionless and decentralized blockchain is interesting to work with in that respect. And I'll come a little back to this. On the traceability issues, the last mileage problems must be managed. So even if you have a system, there's always the input. Where does that come from? Who have done the input, which is the last mileage problems. Also, data writers must be able to work with these and get these things implemented in the system, and also to track the data. That must be finalized immediately to prevent a rollback, because if you even have a system where you can track data, you can get your transactions, but if it is not truly immutable, and if we go a little bit into the technical side in a moment, you'll understand the difference between proof of work and proof of stake, where one system is deterministic. That means you never know whether it's really going to be rolled back and change all the transactions you have done, or whether it's immutable and finalized, i.e. done when it is done, and that is the proof of stake system, and which we are building on. Many provenance cases are only economically viable if data registration costs are low and predictable. This is very important because if you do transactions at some of the blockchain systems today, where the transactions fee comes up and down with the value of the payment token on the system, you see very often now that for certain validations, that cost of validation is higher than the cost of the asset you are going to validate. Naturally, needless to say, that doesn't make sense at all. And also, it must be energy efficient as a system like the proof of stake to be relevant. I was looking into a system to track cobalt, which is one of the big issues when you do batteries for cars. That is that you use cobalt, and cobalt many places in Africa is mined with use of child labor, and one of the things the producers would like in traceability cases for, and where you can use blockchain, is to validate where this comes from, which mines it comes from. And if you build that on a proof of work system like Ethereum, for example, then you might spend more electricity just to validate than actually you save by using that electrical vehicle. So of course, that's a contradiction in term. So in short, proof of work for me is a contradiction in term when we talk about a sustainable world. Cambridge University have a very good tracker of Bitcoin's use of electricity. And when I looked last, it was spending 0.6% of the entire production of electricity in the world. Needless to say, you can't have these systems running. It is simply just because that protocol have been decided for as it was designed for a great system thinking, but now we have the proof of stake protocols, which are solving this problem. So the world is moving on. And we also on our blockchain are coding in Rust, which again is a very efficient language. So we are one of the most efficient blockchains in the world. So the trust and the greenwashing, traceability and permissionless decentralized blockchain is one of the examples of some of the challenges in the past which can be solved, because one of the biggest challenges when you talk about transaction, or we talk about relationship between people at large, that is the trust, to create trust. And then with blockchain, we can bring this next generation trust into our systems. And if we talk about it in connection with traceability, here you can have a farm to the fork with just a scan code. So you can make it very easy for the consumer. We're working with one case right now with one of the biggest producers of sports equipment. And there you could, when you buy the shoes, you can just scan the code on the shoe and you can see the farm to fork, so to speak. You can see exactly what has happened here on the CO2 side in producing this shoe. And in a vision, you could scan a code and it just becomes red or green. You could on your app put in what are my preferences, what would make me as a consumer think that I will buy this project or product. I think working with that kind of very, very easy tools, red or green, I have decided that is moving the whole power from the producers down to the consumers in a very nice way. And there you can use blockchain because you again need something which is instant, immutable, and have an audit trail that it is transparent. So you can really be and empower people with these smart contracts and automation. There are unlimited amount of use cases. What is important on permissionless blockchain is that you have no single point of control. You have no single point of failure. And this is so different from all the other systems you are looking at in the world where...
Yabancı bu ya. Türk konuşmayacak.
Sorry? Okay. When you're looking at blockchain, there is no single point of control or single point of failure. It's permissionless and it is decentralized. This is really bringing democracy into and empowering people who are building on the system and who are using the system. And for corporations, this is giving a new way to think about what you're doing. It's like doing everything with an open door. And This is very welcome in the companies I'm working in, thinking about everything you do. Why do you need to have like a back room and a front room? Why could you not only have a front room? Why couldn't we do everything together? A co-creation of everything with an immediate understanding and transparency, because many of the problems in the world does come from that we don't share the same history, we don't share the same picture. This is one of the Fonss blockchain will enable a platform which can enable that total new way to work together in the world. You can also use it for Internet of Things sensors. We're working with one super interesting use case, which also can be a lighthouse for how anybody who works with algorithms towards consumers need a verification for how was the algorithms when I took this decision. In autonomous cars, self-driving cars for the future, that's naturally one of the biggest issues. How did that algorithm work when the car took a decision to take a right swing or to take a left swing, or to stop or not to stop, not to brake? If accidents comes, that you can verify those sensors and the algorithm behind at a given point in time, and that you can keep that data and storage for later, and that you can give an immediate access to it, a permissionless access, because on blockchain, everybody can look in from outside, and you can make that easy verification on anything. And this is very interesting if you think about it also for big financial institution, for banks. And the whole idea behind the Bitcoin maximalism, for example, is to again gain power and do a secondary system of money flow in the world. And here you have a technology which is very fitted for the regulator, actually, because everything is kept and is immutable. And this is the regulator's dream, to have something which is transparent and immutable. So in that way, it's also a little bit circular. You see a fantastic disruptive technology, which is actually fitting into a regulated world. You can also use blockchain for vindication registry. So a whole new way to prove that you own this asset. Interesting, and on the list is also tokenization. You can use it for bringing every asset into a token. You can share the holiday house with friends, you can buy it together, you can tokenize it, and there your asset becomes very liquid because you can trade the token. You could even make it into a token which then could be traded at an exchange. So to move from having an asset, taking it into tokenization, taking that asset also to be tradable. This is some of the use cases we're working on, is for some of the biggest issuers of bonds and also loans in Europe, where you can tokenize it again and make some of these structured products, which normally might only be accessible with the lot sizes you can trade, might only be accessible for a large financial institution or pension funds, and suddenly these assets can reach the retail market because you can do the tokenization of them. Car mileage, for example, service book tracking. This is one of the big problems when you are looking at buying a second-hand car, that has the car mileage been filled with. The car price is directly related to the mileage of the car, and you as a buyer of a new car wants to make sure that this car has been serviced and have been serviced in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendation. And here you can have a blockchain-based car mileage and service book tracker. Again, immutable, so you know that these data haven't been fiddled with because you can see the entire history of records. We also are working with this in connection with a platform where you can buy secondhand cars. There are big platforms where car manufacturers and car dealers who often take a car in and swap that car for a new car, and then they sell the cars on auto auctions. And that's a problem with the payment because they don't know the counterpart. And in car sales and secondhand car sales, there's a lot of fraud and a lot of risks. So here you could actually have a platform where you can finance the car, you could sell the car, you can sit with the ownership of the car, and the other party can sit with the funds, and you can swap it in a smart contract. So you know that you don't let go of the registration certificate of the car before you actually get the money. And then you can have that little component in and built in as a little escrow component to the platform. The alternative, for example, is to take the risk, or the alternative is that when you go global with a product, you would need an escrow function made with all banks, relevant banks in the local jurisdiction that you're building your car portal here, car sales portal, which again is cumbersome because no banks today want to onboard a customer they don't know because of the KYC, know your customer problematics. So blockchain can facilitate a lot of new products which you would otherwise have big cost, or it would be very cumbersome, or it wouldn't really be possible to globalize that product. ESG production compliance, as I said, and traceability, authentication of products, medicine, vaccination proofs. Now, a lot of us have the COVID passport where others need to validate, do you have a COVID passport? Do you have a vaccination passport for anything else? There again, you can connect it to your blockchain base. So that part who is going to see it can get an instant validation of not only do you have that proof, but was that proof also issued by a competent authority? The same functionality you could use for universities. Many universities have the problem that you onboard and would very much and welcome students from other universities, and they make the application and they put in their proof of education, and it's essential that they really do have this qualification to come in. Otherwise you don't get a class if it's on a master level who actually have the qualifying bachelor behind. If there's a lot of fraud, or it's an amount of work and cost for the university to validate the papers. If you build a global registration on blockchain for education certificates, then immediately it would be possible to validate on the blockchain that that person actually had the proper education and that it was issued by the competent university. If you think you could move a thought about how you could use that like nearly forever, there's so many possibilities. Other things, NFTs is also super interesting. Another use case we're working on. TikTok have a playlist which is very different from other top music platforms like Spotify. So TikTok have a playlist, and there are a lot of people who make and take a little bit from one video with one artist, mix it in, make a remix of things. And we're building a platform now for people who have been at some of the big recording maker houses, production houses for music in the world, and they are wrapping a content of music or merchandise around an artist into an NFT, and then they can look at who is on TikTok's playlist, and they can knock on the door on the platform to these content and music makers and say, do you want an NFT with a wrapping of your favorite artists? Maybe it's just lines from a new soundtrack or something which has never been publicized, or it can be some visual images you can build into your music video on TikTok. Anything you can wrap into this NFT. So it's a total new way. In the old days where you went to a rock concert and you could buy some of the merchandise and some could get a backstage passport or whatever. Now you can wrap these things into an NFT and provide that to the music artist, a music maker. So it's a new way to cooperate again, that the artists can cooperate directly with their ecosystem. Decentralized finance and DAOs are also, I think, very, very interesting projects. So on DeFi, it can be decentralized DEXs, where you have a liquidity pool. Now you can make also that regulatory compliant, because regulation is also coming into all the decentralized finance issues. The DAOs need now to have regulated liquidity pools. You can do that with smart contracts. And then you can have the other part of the regulation is that you do have to import what is called the travel rule. So it's again on the compliance KYC. And then you can have a lot of these compliant validators, and you can put them into your DEX, again decentralized. So you can have an automated flow, but these elements, components you build into your DEXs, where you then can have that whole system pre-approved. So you can also validate if you put your liquidity in here, if you use this DEX, decentralized exchange, to work on, it is compliant with the travel rule, the VASPs which are on that, the liquidity pool itself, the way it's working is already pre-approved. So you can here enjoy a decentralized trading, but that you are sure you do it in a compliant manner. And that is another thing I find fascinating about the smart contract. So you can build things together. Once a smart contract is compliant, then you know that people who are dealing and trading via the smart contract, that this is compliant, which is different from if some of you have worked or know how it's working in financial institutions. One of the biggest problem on compliance is naturally also to have the system in place and to comply with the system. So there's always a risk of a people's error, that they don't know they should have done this, or that it is too cumbersome, so they don't do what they should have done. And here you can just build a smart contract, which is already validated by your compliance organization. If you do the things via this smart contract, then we don't even need to test it afterwards, because there's an auditability for the regulator, but also from the auditors, that they can just look into it themselves because it's all transparent. I think this can take a huge cost out. It's like hundreds of millions of dollars that big banks are using on staying compliant with all the regulations. And the same set of regulations are coming into the whole blockchain space, but it's fitted for it. if you are building your blockchain, so you can make sure that nobody can do things anonymous, that you can't just use the system to stay away from all the regulatory demands. Endless also, I can mention also the metaverse, for example. Everything which is happening in the non-metaverse, within the normal world, if we call it this, can also happen in the metaverse. So you also need to have systems you can wrap NFTs to use in the metaverse. So it is just so endless what you can use and use blockchain for. But again, the traceability, the trust, greenwashing, permissionless, decentralized blockchain, because the foremost challenge in the world is development of trust. And maybe I'm going the wrong way here. Let me just have a look. So what is then the challenges for enterprises? Why are enterprises hesitant to use the Web3, to use blockchain, and how should they use it? In Concordium, we understand the issues, and this is why we were building Concordium. What a company or enterprise or anybody using a blockchain should really consider: which platform offer the best fit in areas such as both security, privacy, scalability, and also how can you make sure that it is giving the customer the right experience. There are so many uncertainties for enterprises and people who are building on blockchain right now, what the regulator will demand, the things I was mentioning before, and also questions about the ownership, questions about interoperability with other technologies, but also maybe with other smart contracts. It's difficult to identify the best potential use cases for the enterprises, because if they don't know what the technology is offering, it's difficult to imagine what you could do, because many of these use cases are new. And this is what is a concern for enterprises, is that they understand, they do need to understand it, but they don't understand it yet. And how comprehensive should it be? The most important structure right now for that business case and what to put around it, it's difficult to decide whether to make the first move, creating a consortium, or whether to join an existing consortium, or how should I go about it. There's extensive communication, interaction, change management efforts which are needed in order to build such a use case or a new business concept on a blockchain, and that is also putting up a mental hurdle. We see in a lot of corporations, there's always a few people who are eager to do blockchain, and it's very difficult even for them to explain in their organization, because you explain something which for many people are just on the vocabulary is difficult. And there are also several technical and technological issues to address, including the performance of that blockchain. We have heard about things breaking down. We have heard about backdoors. We have heard about lack of scalability. How is the data governed? What data should you put on chain where it's immutable, not to get in conflict with all the data governance requirements? And how does it fit into the enterprise architecture? A lot of questions is on the table here. And why is it then that we have built a permissionless and decentralized solution with an ID? Because that is different on our blockchain. Everybody who is using the blockchain must be identified. This is also a way to make sure that you know who you're trading with. We have a functionality where you can be identified But then we have zero knowledge proof. So you don't need to know who I am in certain use cases. In certain use cases, you would like me to call on some of my things I have in the ID object. So I could call on certain things, prove it with a zero knowledge proof, like I'm a EU citizen, or I am above a certain age. So you can call on all these, or which is very relevant just now, am I on a sanction list? That I could also prove with my identity object and the use of zero knowledge proof. And then we can create trust between each others, because I might not need to know in this specific case, you are you, exactly you, with your name and your ID, etc., because that could also create problems. You don't want to give your full identity to everybody in the world, because there's also the big problem of being that somebody could actually take and steal your identity. But to do an identity with zero knowledge proof is a very smart concept. And then all the transactions on our blockchain comes with a stamp. So if the regulator would need to see, because of a maybe anti-money laundering situation, needs to see who have done what at what point in time, they can then have that identity revoked by, again, decentralized system. We cannot from the Concordium Foundation, but our partners can do it. If you come with a court order, relevant court order, then that can be revoked. And that is taking this anonymity away from blockchain, which is one of the big headaches the regulators have. So we are ensuring that if you use Concordium blockchain, you don't have this part which maybe more belongs to the black dark net and to anti-money laundering cases. So you can wrap a new technology without taking the core thinking behind the decentralization, behind the empowerment away from it. We have other things on our blockchain. It is the first blockchain with ID. This is why we say we are compliant. We have a regulatory compliant readiness by design. This is a system of self-sovereign identification of participants. So you just do it yourself. You come with your documentation via our identity providers, and in few seconds you have your identity in your wallet. It is also with the privacy, as I said, based on zero knowledge proof. And it is instant deterministic finalization. When you have done a transaction on our blockchain, it's done. It can never be rolled back. We have a very high throughput rate, which is very much larger than, for example, Ethereum. And we are now also working on sharding, so it will be in zero indefinite scalability. You can also use our sharding to take out private shards if you want to do a use case where you don't need instantly or constantly to do things on the blockchain, but you can do it in a private shard, and then you can use our finalization and a consensus protocol just to get maybe on less frequent basis, just get that batch verified, because that would allow you in a private shard really to speed up again your transactions, which might make sense for certain use cases which have a very high demand on speed. Very low transaction fees. It's stable in euros. It's expressed in our native token, the CCD, but it is stable in the token. So when you do your use case, it's possible for you to know and predict what will this cost to run this use case for the next many years. This is a prerequisite. If you want to build use cases, you must know what the cost of it is, so you don't make a nice use case, and then the underlying token is going so sky high in value that you simply can't pay for your transactions. We have a smart contract platform you can deploy already now. If you want to build it our blockchain, we can invite you even into special testnets where we can also assist you in optimizing. And not least, we are backed by top tier science research. We have a heavy research backing from University of Aarhus and ETH in Zurich. So any cryptographic proof, you can read our white paper, you can look at our code. It is exactly the same. We are coding in from our science papers. So a very high degree of certainty on how the cryptographic works is working in our blockchain. It's not smart coders who have been putting something together. And also we are the best in class on the environmental impact. So I just want to maybe move to this. How do I get started? 1 second. Please, we have a big grant program. We can help you both on decentralized finance use cases, but also all other use cases. So we are running 2 grant programs. You can come into our regulated decentralized fintech lab, where we can help you both with the legal understanding and the technical understanding, marketing understanding on how to get your use case together, build your business and get it to the market. We are very good also of NFTs and also on the ESG side. And please do go into our website and apply for an investment or a grant, and we will help you. You can also watch our CCD crypto channel direct. It's on YouTube every Friday. And this is Claire Ross-Brown, who is our news anchor. And there we are telling a lot of what is going on in the market. It's open for everybody. If you want to get into the CCD channel with some news, we can make a feature. We could make a feature about women in Istanbul. I will tell Claire to reach out, and then we can broadcast to the entire world. We have more than 100,000 viewers of the program so far. So this is what I wanted to tell you. I'm open for a dialogue. I'm open for all questions. We are made for the future economy.
Lone, thank you so much for this very nice presentation. It was really informative, and the information you provided is really very important, especially regarding the ecosystem. And hopefully Concordium will be contributing a lot to the blockchain ecosystem in the future. And I'm asking my audience if they have any questions. Let me ask in Turkish, if you may. Lone için sorusu olan, Concordium'la ilgili sorusu olan katılımcılarımız varsa el kaldırabilirsiniz, söz alabilirsiniz veya chatten yazabilirsiniz. Bu arada ben de bir sorumu ileteceğim kendisine. Boğaçan Yiğitbaşı el kaldırdı bu arada. Boğaçan Bey buyurun lütfen.
Hi, Mrs. Schroder. Thank you for the great presentation and detailed explanation of use cases especially. According to information you just shared, I can say that Concordium is a general purpose layer 1 blockchain. I would like to ask a couple of questions about that. First, we actually know that the proof of stake brings some advantages instead of proof of work. I mean, it's a common thing for all of the blockchain platforms. And for the Concordium's case, how it differs? Concordium is differentiated how Concordium is differentiated when we compare with the opponents like Avalanche, Solano, or the Oasis network in case of latency or throughput. You already covered a little bit on this section, as far as I can remember, in the enterprise challenges, but how it differs really. The most powerful advantage against them is zero knowledge proof ID. And the second, please go ahead.
So thanks a lot for the question. We differ on a couple of ways to those you have mentioned. So we are the only one who have ID at the protocol level. So that is really a big differentiator. Because you have it on the protocol level, you can't circumvent it. So you're sure that your transactions comes with the identity stamp on the chain. That is number one. Number two, it is not many. Avalanche do have finalization, but the others you mentioned doesn't have instant finalization. So this comes in, you have the consensus protocol, and then you have finalization, which is hindering the rollback. That is a very important difference. The other thing is that we are truly science-based. It's not many of those you mentioned who have science behind it. And that means that you do see things are breaking down. If you really take, and it's difficult, you must read the white papers, you must read the code behind the blockchains, and then see whether the code is true to the white paper. It is not the case with many blockchains, so you don't really know what it is you're getting. We want to make this simple for people, so we want to have, and we're working now on software certification. So blockchain is not that different from other software. It's very, very similar in many ways, and we're now working on getting exactly the same software certification as you would expect when you use software from other software providers. So these are some of the most important. Also, the sharding we will come with this year will be groundbreaking, because sharding, without doing the answer too long, but sharding comes with a problem on consensus and the nodes. So should it be exactly the same amount of nodes who are coming in with a consensus for your shards, but then it will slow it down again. Some have done, say, semi-sharding, I would call it, by, yes, then it is fewer nodes. Solana have very few nodes for their consensus compared with what we would define as a decentralized system. So that is a battle. The battle is between, do you want speed, but then you jeopardize the security and independency and truly decentralization. We have some of the best brains in the world from ETH and our own scientists working on this. It's not trivial questions. It takes time to develop the science papers, get them peer reviewed by other scientists, and then code and make sure what your coding is behind it. So these are the most important things, but not least the pure financing of your smart contracts, that we have the stable transaction fee, very low transaction fee, 1 euro cent for a simple transaction. So on 4 really important matters, at least when I look at it with my large corporation hat, we're very different. I hope it
Thanks a lot. I do have a second question, but it's related to the transaction fee, and you already covered that. And the final one is about the smart contract development language. Is it Rust like the chains, or Solidity is accepted or empowered by the Solidity? Thanks.
Yeah, so thank you for this question. It is Rust, but we really would like to make our platform also available for everybody. So we're now making compilers. And Solidity is one of the languages we will compile to naturally, because a lot of smart contracts are already made on Solidity, and it would be very nice to give those smart contracts the opportunity to use Concordium.
Thank you very much, Lone. I guess that's all from our audiences. And Boğaçan, also thank you very much for your nice questions. Boğaçan'ın soruları için de çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Başka sorusu olan varsa iletebiliriz kendisine, Lone için. Eğer yoksa da bir sonraki oturumumuz için 5 dakikalık bir ara verelim ve bir sonraki oturumda tekrar sizlerle birlikte olalım diyoruz. Lone, thank you so much for your contributions. I know it's very early there in Oslo right now, and it's cold there. And that was very nice of you to join us for this event. And thank you for all your support. Hopefully, we will be cooperating in many other projects together in the future. And thank you for your invitation for Istanbul Blockchain Women to your channel also, crypto channel.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, and for everybody in your ecosystem in Istanbul. Please join us. We would very much like, we enjoy this discussion. You have a very, very high level of understanding of blockchain. Please join us. We'll look forward. Thanks for now, and enjoy your conference.
Thank you so much. Bir sonraki oturumumuz saat 11'de, bir 5 dakikalık ara veriyoruz. Saat 11'de sizlerle tekrar birlikte olacağız. Görüşmek üzere şimdilik. Thank you, Lone.